Good afternoon. I'm Courtney Carr, Director of Marketing and Education for IAPD. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Securing Your Business, Navigating Cybersecurity Challenges, presented by Dan Thormodsgaard, Chuck Crawford, and Kerry Kilker of Fishtech Group. During the presentation, you may submit questions into the Questions tab on your webinar toolbar, and we will answer them at the conclusion of the presentation. Following the webinar, you will receive a link to a brief survey. Once you have completed the survey, there will be a link to download the presentation slides. A recording of today's webinar will also be available for download on the IAPD website. Dan Thormodsgaard is the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Fishtech. He is a strategic advisor to Fortune 500 enterprise accounts, technology companies, and government institutions. He listens, discusses, and supports long-term SDN, cloud, and security initiatives for his client organizations. Dan specializes in finding unique solutions to successfully map infrastructure, DevOps, and security technology to business objectives. Chuck Crawford is the Chief Customer Officer of Fishtech. He brings 20+ years of infrastructure and security experience and relevant leadership to Fishtech. His talent for aligning technology to organizational strategy is exceptional. Kerry Kilker is Fishtech's Chief Information Security Officer. He is responsible for Fishtech's security, governance, and compliance initiatives. Kerry is a highly respected information security and technology executive with 30+ years of industry experience. Most recently, he served as Senior Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer for Wal-Mart Technology, where he established and operated a world-class cybersecurity program for the world's largest retail organization. I would now like to turn the presentation over to Kerry.
Thank you, Courtney. Good afternoon, everybody. Chuck and Dan, our two co-founders, and I are happy to join you today and talk you through a few slides and take any questions you might have. It's a pleasure to join you in these difficult times where we're all kind of stuck at home and living on Zoom meetings. So I know everybody's anxious to get back to some version of normalcy, whatever that's going to look like and whenever that is. So we're happy to join you today. Chuck, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Here's just a quick agenda of what we're prepared to talk to you all about. And of course, we're happy to make this interactive and then answer any questions you have at the end. But, just kind of we're just going to do a quick overview of who we are. Also issue some of the problem statements. So, Dan and I and Kerry, we're out talking to clients daily, multiple times a day, both large, small, medium-sized clients. But we always hear a lot of, especially now, a lot of the common problem statements coming from our clients in regards to the challenges they have. And, we're going to talk a little bit about our approach and how we solve things and how we help our customers think through these problems to solve these solutions and ultimately come to the solution that fits their organizations and is a unique approach that we believe most organizations should think about and why it's important to every member of an organization, not just IT, not just security, but every member within an organization and why it matters. And then just kind of do a snapshot of what a typical reference architecture means and why is that important to you. Again, illustrating every component of an organization and how you fit into the maturity and security posture of your organization as you move forward, especially in these crazy times we're in today. So, Dan, you want to go to the next slide? All right, so real quick snap, this is Mr. Gary Fish. So one of the cool things about Gary, he built and ran one of the largest security integration firms in the United States back in the day. Very successful businessman, but very forward-thinking businessman. And as he approached Kerry, Dan, and I back in the day of basically saying, hey, we're seeing a new challenge hit our clients that we need to see that is more business risk-driven as opposed to product-driven. And what we're seeing, and it's definitely amplified by what our clients are faced today, such as yourselves and about every other organization, including ourselves, is, even moving to this remote workforce, like Kerry alluded to, of Zooms and WebEx meetings and being in quarantine and isolation, the impact that has on organizations' business strategies and security strategies is much more than just a security issue and a technology issue. It's actually a business issue. And measuring that from a business risk and solving that is much more than just selling widgets and products and technologies. It's actually engaging business units, business stakeholders, and looking at this from a very strategic and holistic angle, and providing that journey for customers and that guidance for customers do that journey to make sure they're solving the right pain points correctly, and they're not just solving a point-in-time solution, which is going to break on the next hype cycle, whatever the next challenge or issue may come through on that side. So Gary had the foresight and vision to kind of buy into that thing, that kind of approach for our customers. It's definitely more of a consultative approach and an engagement with our customers, which we've been around for 4 years now. Really excited about this model of how we talk to our customers, and we talk customers through this journey, as Dan likes to call it, and engaging them and helping them solve these challenges, that are even more amplified now as they're moving from legacy to on-prem to this cool, crazy, scary buzzword called cloud. And what does cloud mean to you? And now you have, even more amplified with quarantining, and then on top of that, you have these crazy people out there that decide to take advantage of these situations by sending out malware and targeted what's called phishing scams and things like ransomware that are now trying to take advantage of folks in these horrible situations, again, to try to make money but make life miserable on all of us in this together, right? And so again, those are not technology issues; these are journey issues and more of a people process issue and an awareness issue, along with technology moving ahead. So Dan, do you have anything else you want to add on to that?
No, I think you said it quite well, Chuck. When we decided to build this company, we were really focused on the customer journey and helping our customers on that journey. And the previous Fishnet Security, we were very focused on product sales and really felt that with cloud adoption and organizations trying to get through through that process, and what do they do? What's their strategy? What should we be thinking about? We really saw this big shift from IT sprawl, where basically business units weren't basically IT was not keeping up with the business units, so the business units were going out and standing up their own IT. And so now we're trying to bring it back together and provide security and governance around it. And really, in order to help customers, we really need to take that very consultative approach as opposed to try to sell them a product or a widget.
Yep. So if you look at how we're built, again, one of the key words that you see out of why we built this company the way we are, you don't see value-added reseller in our name very much anymore, because again, what I'm sure most organizations experience is the value-added resellers is pretty much gone out the door. What you see is advisory focus, strategic focus, proactive focus, and more importantly, data-driven, right? And so cybersecurity is a huge word right now. Again, it's more than just IT, it's more than just IT security, it's organization-wide, and making sure as we engage our customers, we're looking at this from multiple angles, and talking to them proactively and from an advisory perspective, walking through the challenges. And we'll show you a couple slides here a little later in regards to our approach of taking customers and our users through this journey out of the technology, out of the immediate pain point that may be in front of them, whether it's a ransomware issue or maybe they got hacked or they think they got hacked. What is the ultimate issue with any organization that caused that? Pulling them back and looking at the strategy and making sure that's aligned to their business strategy moving forward. So as we built this company called Fishtech Group, we decided to build it a little different and non-standard compared to most organizations, to ensure that we're also offering a nice, cohesive, holistic solution to our organizations, right? So our cybersecurity services that we build out within Fishtech Group is meant to approach and also be able to solve from a very services-focused angle all things that we feel are important within an organization's pain points for building a mature, holistic, and being able to operationalize their security program that fits in their business needs. So things like identity and access management, which we'll talk a little bit about access needs that we all faced as we move to this remote workforce, right? How do we authenticate? Are we getting into what we need to get to? And are you only able to access what you need to, or is it wide open, right? Very simple questions like that your IT and your security team had to face in a very immediate need, which I'm sure all of you had to go through those struggles as you were trying to get online on things like that. And then you look at governance issues and CRC, what we call CRC, cyber governance and things like that. Is again, as we move to these remote distributed workforces, organizations still have to remain compliant, right? You still have to follow your security frameworks. You still have regulations and regulatory needs that you have to meet moving forward. And as you build, and adapt to these various environments, these architectures and technologies and challenges, you name it, the governance piece is always critical. and tying that into identity and access management, tying that into, you know, the rest of the architecture and infrastructure you have within your organization, right? So another services offering we have is the enterprise architecture practice, right? So looking at things holistically, tying the people and processes in with relevant technologies as it ties to your business strategy moving ahead. So again, very holistic cybersecurity services offering, and moving that over into our, what we call our Cyderis offering, right? So the cool piece that most organizations are seeing today, and a lot of the pain points, unfortunately, that most organizations are seeing today is that once you build it, how do you operationalize it? How do you manage it moving forward? And most organizations are so short-staffed in being able to monitor the threats that are coming into them and the attacks that are coming into them, as well as keep the devices patched, as well as look at all the cool, crazy logs that are going on, you know. As we walked through this dry run yesterday and was looking at some of the attendee lists, you know, there's a lot of distributors, there's a lot of various type of organizations as it relates to this IAPD organization. All that encompasses very much different kinds of activity, right? So who in the back end is looking at the access log? Who in the back end is looking at the attack type activity that is coming in through these environments? And how do you know if you're hacked, right? That's the other piece. You don't know what you don't know. And providing that visibility proactively can be very critical on that side. So we developed this arm called Cyber Defense and Response, which is our Cyderis arm, which is meant to not just be a traditional managed services arm, but to actually go out and actually review proactively, engaging our customers, what the attacks are, tailoring these to your environments, our solutions to proactively monitor, support, and look at the insider threat vectors and threat attacks, and provide proactive, you know, attack measures, as well as looking at you reactively and helping you through those incidents such as malware, ransomware, you name it, moving ahead. The other cool piece that we're seeing, especially taking off now, moving ahead on our Haystack side, is a company called Haystacks. Again, this is really relevant. We're seeing most in large organizations, especially where Kerry came from, as well as other financial institutions, is this whole concept of insider threat and public and physical safety that's going on in a lot of these large retail organizations, unfortunately, that you read about, which is very scary and unfortunate. So the ability to incorporate insider threat plus physical safety and security and incorporating that into an overall security posture in organizations is an absolute must moving ahead for organizations. So being able to look at that, you know, Gary was talking about this whole concept of converged security. It's absolutely a need. So if you look at a lot of the organizations of encompassing feeds, which may seem mundane, but actually is very relevant in regards to physical access feeds, camera feeds, printer feeds, network access feeds, you know, access logs, Wi-Fi logs, and correlating that together to give these users and organizations a holistic profile of what is normal behavior within the organization, right? And then being able to identify what is not normal behavior. And that, you know, that helps being able to extract that information to give yourselves not only a holistic point of view, helps with your auditors, helps with the compliance team, helps with organizations, God forbid, if you do get attacked or going into ransomware, if we could come in and kind of look at things holistically with that type of data moving ahead. So, Dan, anything else you want to add on to that, or Kerry?
No, I think you summarized it quite well. I think it's really the diversity that we created in this organization, very much consultative and helping organizations. I think one of the things that's a little bit different than your typical VAR is we were able to reboot, start from scratch, learn from all of our past experience that we learned, you know, from our managed services perspective, how you know, you get to rethink and start over, which is a luxury. So we were able to move at a very fast pace. So we started with Chuck, myself, Gary, and our CFO, Ryan, and we are now approximately about 250 employees within 4 years. So it's just extremely rapid growth. We're very fortunate to be in this space, and there's a lot of validation points that we're getting from customers on our mission and our direction. So thanks, Chuck. I 100% agree. So on the problem statement, really what we see from a security perspective is, you know, how do I mitigate business risk? So that if you think about what's going on right now with the COVID crisis, is I think we're recognizing a lot of risk in IT alignment. So we're talking to a lot of folks here in the manufacturing space, and, you know, obviously you've got operational technologies, you know, technologies that are now driving your plants and your production lines. Those are, how do we protect those environments? How do we protect them? They're legacy systems in a lot of cases. We need, how do we isolate those? How do we mitigate our business risk? If I've got a plant that's producing a large majority of my product, we've got one customer that, they have a lot of their product line majority of their product is manufactured out of overseas, and it accounts for 40% of their revenue. So what happens if that organization goes down and it's impacted and not able to deliver their shipments to customers? I think we're seeing some of that right now with the COVID crisis in terms of, offshore manufacturing and the impact to that based on certain circumstances that we're experiencing. So we're seeing a lot, and I think Kerry, you can add some context to this in terms of dashboards and measuring of different things in terms of that business risk to IT risk, and how do you really think about that, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's important to provide some visibility to the business so they understand the risk associated to their business. So I did in my past, I created some dashboards, and we put them on monitors all around the building and customized them for the audience. So if it was in my old world, for the stores, it was, cyber risk to the stores and what that meant to maybe point of sale. But it's about education and awareness. So I think you've got to take a complex topic like cyber threats and customize this so the business can understand what it means to their particular business element. And it starts with education and awareness of teaching the audience, whoever that may be, of what it means to them.
And a lot of times it'd be a situation where, there's a certain, attack, for example, maybe something like ransomware. Questions would be asked to you, like, how are we protecting? How are we able to mitigate that threat? What was your response in situations like that?
With everything being so public today, I would get quite, you can't go through a day without some breach being, in the press or on social media. So we found ourselves very proactively trying to get ahead of that and say, we'd send out a note to whoever the appropriate audience was and say, you probably saw the X breach in the paper today. Here's what we know about that. Here's what it means to our organization and why we're protected against that threat, or what we've learned and what we need to go do to improve our posture to protect us better. So I never let an event go unwasted to tell my story on what it meant to, or if this was to happen to us, here's what it would mean to us. And if you can put that into dollars, it's very insightful. It's kind of scary, but it's very eye-opening and insightful.
Chuck, thoughts?
No, I can't echo more than what Kerry just said there. If you could take it, make it relate home, and be proactive, numbers go a long way in regards to justifying that. I remember when I was a CISO, in my day, we had an incident 2 months into my job, and that was we made CNN, all these things, and that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I was able to immediately justify my budget, my strategy, my spend for what needed to have happen there. And so I absolutely can't agree more.
Yeah.
Some of the other challenges that we see is, especially depending upon the maturity of your organization around security. Obviously, the awareness that Kerry talked about is key. But where do I start? Where do I begin? What are your thoughts there, Kerry? You got any, starting from the ground up?
Well, yeah, I think it depends where everybody's journey is, right? But if I'm starting out, I think you have to do a baseline, kind of a gap assessment of where you are currently. And then I think, and there's several models you can, assess yourself against. There's several popular industry models. And I think you pick which one best suits your business, and then you do a gap assessment and you figure out, and that gives you a baseline. Then I think you have to figure out what's most important to an organization. What would be damaging, either financially, brand and reputation, et cetera, if it was to leak out or get breached. And then you can see if you've got the proper controls and protection around whatever those data elements are. It depends upon your business. And then once you have that gap, you can and identify what's important, put protections around that, and then on some frequency, I think you have to test your environment.
Verify.
Yep. Test.
Oftentimes we need to what are oftentimes called red teams, where we test and validate our controls to make sure that they're effective or not effective, or where are our gaps. Chuck, one of the things that I've heard, especially in this industry that we're talking to, I don't have a security operations center. What should I do? Should I build my own? Should I look to an outsourcer for that, or do I insource? Do I outsource? What do I do?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There's no quick answer to that, to be honest with you. Depending on the size of the organization, depending on the complexity of the organization, depending on the type of data you need, the requirements and compliance requirements you need. The issue where we see organizations make a mistake at is assume it has to be done in-house because it's just easier. And what they forget about are all the complexities that go with that. Or they make the shotgun reaction of just, no, we need to outsource all that because I can't do it in-house. And then they forget about all the complexities that go along with that, right? And so being able to, again, take a step back, right? And so it's kind of funny you mentioned these problem statements because they almost all are connected to each other and piggyback with each other in regards to what an organization really, really needs to look at to make these kind of critical decisions. Building a security operations center is not cheap, right? It is not cheap to not only run that technology in-house, making sure you have all the business units brought in, you're looking at the right data, you have all the right data classified, you know what the impacts are, you have a CMDB built, you have the staff to monitor it 24/7, 365. But the biggest issue most organizations face is, okay, I have a log management system running, I have a help desk system running, my users are logging in, I can look at those logs, and I'll just call the help desk, and then we'll just go from there, and that's my SOC. Well, you're not really proactively finding incidents at that point, right? You're still reactive, and you're not looking at everything from that angle. The other piece on SOCs are, if you decide to invest in them, not only having the technology, the mature processes, the integration that goes along with that, the coordination amongst multiple units to make sure, again, as applications or new services or new widgets come on board or new facilities come on board worldwide, that those are brought into your monitoring scheme. But the staff, right? This is the biggest challenge we're seeing within organizations worldwide, is the lack of staff to be able to support these 365, right? 7 days a week, 365, and then the talent and skill set needed internally to know what you're looking for and to turn that into more of an ROI for the organizations, right? So we're seeing more and more organizations kind of stay somewhat in the middle, right? So they're housing some of it in-house, but outsourcing some of the after hours and weekends and holidays. Or even outsourcing some of the more specialized work towards organizations that could help them augment and fill in those gaps moving ahead. So, I mean, there's not really a right or wrong or sweet answer. Are you looking at it the right way from, again, a business risk, not a technology person only, right?
Yeah, I think it's vitally important that you have somebody watching your environment, whether you do it internally or you outsource it. I think it's extremely important to have somebody watching your environment and what's coming in and what's going out.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise you have no visibility. You're reactive versus proactive.
Yep.
Well, and often you don't even know how bad you don't even know you're in trouble until you're in bad trouble. You're flying blind.
How many times have you heard in the press where they've been exploited, and it's over 3 years of the exploitation, right? And so it's gone. I mean, it's too late at that point. You're pretty much owned.
Yep.
What about ransomware? If in a ransomware scenario, what's my best defense against ransomware?
It's a loaded question, Dan. I would say, to me, outside of just your normal technologies, it's the people, right? It's the awareness of people, and it's the training on the users. And again, this goes back to my earlier comment when we opened this webinar, and that security is everyone's problem. It sounds cheesy and it sounds very vague, but ransomware is probably the perfect example of why it is everyone's problem, because you all get email and you all are getting these phishing scams. And yeah, the technologies are in place to do the best they can to block those, but there's always targeted scams that are coming in to organizations that these technologies can't always catch. And so we have to rely on the humans and people not to click on the emails they shouldn't be clicking on, right? Or the messages they should be clicking on, or giving away the information that they think they're doing in a nice way, or maybe to help themselves out, but it's actually just, absolutely the worst thing that could possibly happen. That's disabling them infrastructure-wise.
Well, unfortunately, in bad times like we're in with COVID-19, bad people take advantage of those situations. So you see a spike in ransomware and malware activity that's, masked to look like a COVID map or something. Bad guys are tricky.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting much more sophisticated in their attacks. They're very much spirit attacks, and not just outside of ransomware. It's not unheard of that we hear of a customer that basically an attacker knows who the HR person is, knows who the payroll system, what kind of payroll system you have. They've done a lot of good research. They send information to whoever's responsible for payroll and say, hey, my bank account has changed. Makes it look like it's exactly the same person that is sending the email. Hey, my bank account has changed. Please transfer my checks over to this account. I mean, they're getting very, very sophisticated. I know I get emails, Kerry, I believe you get them, Chuck, you get them, that are, hey, this is our boss, Gary Fish. I told you to go do this, and make sure you happen, right? So these are, you really got to be due diligence. Double check, pick up the phone, call. Hey, I got this email from you. I just want to make sure that this is you and that you had asked me to do this, right? So different types of ways. It's not just ransomware. It's really clicking through your emails. Email attacks, spear phishing attacks are very, very common and very difficult to address. So one of the areas that we're seeing today with the COVID crisis is really an increase of work from home users. Here's an example of just the activity that we're seeing to support the work from home user. And I would like to hear this from, we can make this as interactive as possible, but this is top of mind for everyone. And one of the areas, I just got off the phone with a gentleman that was part of this industry, a friend of mine that I've worked together with for many years. And basically his challenge, as he described, is I've got, back office folks that don't have a PC. So the first, do I get them a laptop? Do I provide, what kind of mechanism can I provide back so that they can actually get access to the payroll systems that are back in corporate, in the corporate environment, access to corporate systems for HR and payroll, as well as back offices and processing, invoicing, et cetera. This is top of mind with every one of our vertical customers. Doesn't matter whether it's the retail, manufacturing, healthcare. We had one customer that basically had one of our Fortune 100 customer had 50,000 work at home users that are normal. They're now going to 120,000 work at home users in a couple of weeks. This is top of mind for everyone. Thoughts, Chuck, Kerry?
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely top of mind. Again, the impacts to this is just kind of what I alluded to earlier, and what you mentioned as well, Dan, is it impacts all levels in the organization now with this work from home situation that we're stuck in, and business continuity is now completely changed and needs to be reevaluated. On top of third-party contractors, the supply chains, all of these things are being impacted. We talked to another large organization, the three of us here, that had some outsourced third-party support in India, right? And when that shut down, the immediate impact to their support structure from a development perspective and contracting perspective, even on the help desk side, that was outsourced. So things like that were much more than just a how do I dial in from home type scenario. It is oh my gosh, I have an entire subset of my workforce now having to dial in from home on devices that I don't even control, getting access to data within my secured environment, right? So it's very complex, and it's not just an IT issue. It is now a true organization's business risk.
That work at home PC, I don't think has any malware, does it?
No, not at all. And your kids don't use it either, right? Or shared.
Right. They're clicking on everything they can, right? So I mean, yeah, you're your risk profile goes up significantly by allowing these machines on, and your mitigation around that is key, right? So one of the areas that we've talked about the problem statement, some ideas and thoughts around solutions to the problem. We really feel strongly that you've got to take it up a few notches and walk through the. This is our approach that Chuck and I put together back in the early days, and we saw this in our industry for many years. What's your strategy? What are you trying to get accomplished? How are you aligning to business? How are you mapping that to your governance program as it relates to your compliance, and mapping it to business requirements in order to keep your doors open and function as an organization? That then drives your architecture in terms of the decisions of what you're doing, as opposed, oftentimes we see organizations that start here and they work their way back, or they miss the strategy or governance, and it's an afterthought later on. It's always very important and prudent to prove that the people, process, and technology is effective and working, as opposed to finding out, implement it, go right to implementation, and find out, oh, we forgot about something, or we don't have the proper people to operationalize it. Very key. Operational, this is where we see things kind of fall apart. A lot of organizations solve problems by technology. Let's go buy this widget. The widget, we were told that the widget solves the problem. It goes to 11 for all of you that know that terminology. And of course, it never does, right? They have one objective, it's to sell you technology. Did we think about operationalizing? Who's going to be able to effectively operationalize this? We talked about SOC. I've never seen us in our history, Chuck, when we would do a SOC assessment, there was never a SOC that was under $4 million. It was always north of $4 million. And that's people, process, and technology. And your people are usually the most cost that you're going to have, because you got to staff that and retain that staff. So this is an important thing to think about every time that we're looking at whatever we're doing. We should follow a thought process in terms of how we're going to go about it, how we're going to be able to support it, etc. Thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, a couple scenarios. I was working with a rubber manufacturing organization a couple years ago, and one of the common scenarios that had happened, because they weren't involved in the in the strategy design of their wide area network plans for tying all their distributed plants together, was performance, right? So if one of their systems, one of their plants went offline, what's the impact of the organization overall? What was their outage? What are things like that? So it's simple things of why the security office needs to approach various business units and validating their strategy to the business strategy and tying that together overall to get that bigger picture. So as we're making these investments, as they're looking at the risk profile, as they're looking at the various stages through here, it's real easy, and this is where we catch a lot of clients, is really hitting the easy button of let's buy a product in the architecture, let's validate it, and let's implement it, and let's move on. And then finding out that you come in a year later and it's sitting as a door anchor, right? Door stop in the organization, because that organization didn't properly scope it right and tie it in right to where they want to go.
So one of the things we talked about, the building blocks, is look at the service model, or your definition of what you're trying to get accomplished, and then look at your sponsorship, your service model. This is we use the TOGAF methodology as a mechanism to review and make sure that we've looked at all aspects, people, process, and technology. Chuck, any thoughts on that? Kerry?
No, I think you hit it. The whole cool thing of this slide is showing of the building blocks just how encompassing this is, right? Again, it's not just a one unit, one organization things. There's so many components that make up this model to build a right program.
Very good. So really, we've talked about the problem statement. Now, how do we execute and fix it and make it all work? So strategy, we take the strategy. It must move at the speed of business, as we talked about. We can't be, I think security in the past has always been arduous, and it's always been no, you can't do that. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do this. So now what we have to do today is we say, yes, you can. but we have to do it in a way that's secure, and we're here together to talk about that. We have some ideas that we'd like to share with you in terms of how we believe that it should be done. We've done some research on it. So the no factor doesn't work anymore. That's how we got to this situation we're in today with IT sprawl. And business working groups. So really what we found that works very, very effective. So we work with a large food distributor several years ago. And what I found that worked really well was they would put a representative from IT out in the business unit that would really be that alignment with the business unit and IT to be able to get a good understanding of what the business unit is trying to get accomplished, and then map that back to an IT function, or bring that to the IT governance committee in terms of this business unit wants to do this. We'd like to be able to, we want to be able to help them. We don't want them to go off and build their own IT. We want to be able to help through that process. What are your thoughts on that? Kerry, did you see anything that in your past experience, any kind of similar models? Or?
Oh yeah, we were referred to as the office of the no for a long time, until we had to change that story to, it's not no, but it's to your point, it's let's do it the right way, let's do it the secure way. But it was a culture we had to change within the organization.
Very good. Did you take any approach of having a representative in the field of the business unit to help align that IT and business organization or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we tried to have ambassadors within the business that we would train to have a little more security mindset. So when they were talking, when the business was talking about doing something, we tried to get them to be a voice that would say, hey, since we're going to deal with payroll information, we probably should loop in, information security and make sure we're protecting that information the right way or whatever. So yeah, we called them security ambassadors, and we tried to embed them within the business units.
Mm-hmm. Chuck, thoughts?
Nope, absolutely agree. One of the things as I talk to organizations, one of the first things I ask for is, how are you talking to the business units? Do you have someone in there that you've trained so that they can almost be a business analyst for you on your behalf? So you have, so they have an input into the security org, and so you have an input into their org, and having that proper representation. I call them technical liaisons where I came from, where I had a person that we trained in each unit, representing their business and technology profile as well, and then tying that into what I call the right governance structure and data governance structure, right? So getting their input on as I built my plans moving forward. One of the cool things that I can't stress enough on top of the strategy and governance is the validate piece, right? So there's nothing more annoying than when, security and IT, and I was one of these guys that did this back when I was on the client side of implementing a technology without the right planning and causing unnecessary outage and disruptions, right? And so because you didn't communicate right, you didn't get the right requirements, you didn't get the right data, right feedback from the right group to holistically do this, right? So the right solution the first time, making sure you got the right input of the various use cases and needs. I can't stress that piece enough.
Great. Well, at this time, I think we'd like to take some questions. We'd like to answer and get some feedback from the folks that are on. And I don't see any questions at this point, but maybe we can open it up to. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
We have a question. Thanks, Dan. Right before we answer the question, as a reminder, everyone, you are able to submit questions within the toolbar on your GoToWebinar. The first question we have is, do you guys have some examples of email messages that have led to malware?
Yes, many. So I'll, we can speak about, no customer specific, but there are so many that I think it's more of an average of when doesn't it happen, right? So there's really good technology out there today. It's getting better, but again, it's always a cat and mouse game. So Proofpoint, Mimecast, ForcePoint are all three technologies that are very good email gateway solutions. But one solution does not solve the problem in itself. It's a combination of, this is where it's really about your your overall strategy. So endpoint solutions in combination with secure web security gateways or email gateways. The reality is that you're not going to be able to catch everything all the time, but we would really like to know if that endpoint has been infected. So, you know, we see something go through, we get an alert that the that the endpoint caught it, but the email system didn't. Now we start looking at egress systems to see if there's any command and control out. Has there been any activity that, and you start doing a triage and start doing reverse engineering as to what actually happened. How bad is it? Obviously, it's been infected. We start quarantining that particular device, and then we start triaging to figure out what happened. So there's many examples of, we've had many situations within Fishtech that, you know, when we're security entrepreneurs that are very well adverse, but we also have our Cybersecurity platform that is managing 24/7/365. We're very fortunate to have that capability that's managing it and be able to respond. And then the next step is remediation. So all of those aspects must be considered as part of that, because it's going to happen, right? It's definitely going to happen. Go ahead, Chuck. Thoughts?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, outside the technology, you know, simple things of what I used to show some of my users, and Kerry, I'm sure you were bombarded with this, with coming from where you came from, is, you know, to Dan's point, a lot of these emails are becoming so sophisticated that they look real, right? And, you know, and then they even look like they're coming from your internal login. Where I came from, you know, we had several that came what looked like from our athletics department directly, including the signature, but we were able to find small things within the actual email header, within the actual body of the message that were actually indicators, right? Misspellings, things, you know, wrong font potentially, you know, small things like that as well. And also, you know, there's also indicators out there as if it's outside the norm, which goes back to needing to normalize your environment and have a better understanding of what's going on in your environment. You know, if it's outside the norm, if you're suspicious of it, definitely should call in before you click, right? It's small things like that that will get through the security controls that Dan outlined, the technologies he outlined, but if it comes to your inbox, which is bound to happen, if it looks too good to be true, you know, I hate, as cheesy as that sounds, but there are indicators within these type of emails that tend to be pretty consistent, like misspellings, like capitalized letters that shouldn't be capitalized, like messages that are out of the norm, that are unexpected, asking for you know, demands that are out of the norm. Pick up the phone and call, right? And see if it's okay. That's totally perfectly okay to do. Kerry, I don't know if there's any more you want to add on to that.
No, I agree. I think I mean, to your comments, it's going to happen. So I think, Dan, you're right. It's very much a layered approach. I mean, tools aren't going to catch it all. So you have to assume somebody's going to click on something somewhere, and then how does it get mitigated, managed, and minimize the impact?
Very good. Any other questions?
So less Nigerian prints these days and very much more sophisticated. Thank you for addressing that. That is the only question that we have at this time. If you guys would like to continue.
Well, we're still looking. We'll take any questions that anyone has.
Yeah, I think that's the last slide, isn't it, Dan?
Yes, that's the last slide.
Yeah. Yes, we're in.
All right. Well, we'll give it another minute or so in case people have additional questions. But always, if anyone on the line has questions, they can reach out to IAPD and we can direct them onto Fishtech. All right. Well, this concludes our presentation. As a reminder, you will receive a survey about today's presentation. Once you complete the survey, there will be a link to download the presentation slides. A recording of today's webinar will also be available on the IAPD website. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your time.